Welcome back. We are all the way through to lesson 13 of module 2. So we've pretty much covered the entire legal basis of the music business. And yeah, I imagine this has been some fairly heavy content. The law was never going to be lightweight, but this is a really important module, and I'm really glad that you've found your way through to lesson 13. I'm really glad that you found your way through to lesson 13. This lesson is entitled The Role of PROs, and you're going to discover what a PRO is, and then I'm going to explain how they work. All right, so PRO stands for Performing Rights Organisation. So let us again go slightly backwards in order to go forwards. We've established that copyright owners, whether you are a copyright owner in a musical composition or a sound recording, have the right to be paid when your work is communicated to the public. Now, communicated to the public is a very broad term. It covers a huge array of different ways that music can be used. It could be somebody playing a song live in a small bar, a musician sitting in the corner, acoustic guitar, singing a song. That song is being communicated to the public, quite obviously, even if there's nobody there. All the way through to a song being played on NPR or Triple J in Australia, some national radio network. That song being played on radio or TV is being communicated to the public, albeit on a very big scale. Now, if you're entitled to get paid for those uses and everything in between, there needs to be a very practical solution to this very complex question of how you're supposed to collect all this money. It sounds great that you're entitled to get paid for so many different ways that your music is being communicated to the public, but as an artist, you probably don't have the time or, to be honest, the interest in going around collecting all of this money yourself. It's just not practical, and it's probably not a good use of your time. So that brings us to the creation of a performing rights organisation. It's obvious that it's beyond your capacity as an individual songwriter, or for that matter a recording artist, to collect performance income. And equally, if you're a cafe or a restaurant or a gym or a bar or any other place that has music playing in your business, the last thing you want is every minute of the day some songwriter walking through the door saying, "Hey, listen, is there any chance that you used any of my music in your store? Because if you did, I'm entitled to a few pennies." Not realistic, not going to work. So it's obvious that there needed to be a collective way of collecting this income. Individual songwriters, individual copyright owners, negotiating, collecting individual use of music payments, not realistic. So this led to the creation of what became known as performing rights organisations, or PROs. Now, they work as a not-for-profit. A PRO is a member-based organisation. It's not a company trying to make a profit on the basis of copyright. Instead, you become a member of a performing rights organisation, and that organisation then collects performance income on behalf of all of its members. So it collects on behalf of you, but it collects on behalf of the other members as well. It does so collectively. Now, what gives them the right to do that? Well, it's not going to surprise you. It's our old friend copyright. You thought we're done with copyright? Nah, it's still around. Copyright says that you own the performing right or the performing rights in your musical compositions or your sound recordings. And in the very last lesson, I talked to you about a thing called assignment, where you transfer your rights to someone else. So when you join a performing rights organisation, you assign your performance right to them. That means they are the owner of your performance right, and the law of copyright then gives them the power to go and enforce those rights. They can go to anyone that's using your music and say, we have been assigned the performing rights in this whole batch of songs, hundreds of thousands of songs by hundreds of thousands of songwriters, in fact millions of songs, and we are able to enforce the use, the payment for the use of those rights. So that's the legal basis of a performing rights organisation. Now, this is not a new idea. These performing rights organisations or societies were first established in France in 1851. I was just a young boy back then. In the UK, the Copyright Act 1842 was the first Copyright Act to recognise that performing rights existed in musical compositions, and in 1914 a performing rights organisation was created in the UK. Other countries similar, 1882 for Italy, Germany 1915, and in the United States the American Society of Composers, Authors and Publishers, which a lot of you have probably heard of, ASCAP, was founded also in 1914. The Society of European Stage Authors and Composers, SESAC, was formed in 1930, and BMI, which some of you may well be members of, BMI Broadcast Music Inc., was formed in 1939. So these performing rights organisations, acting on behalf of, or in fact having the rights of songwriters, have been around for a long, long time. This is not some brand new idea. All right. Now, if you're a performing rights organisation, you are faced with the same problem, but just on a larger scale. Are you really capable, no matter how big you are, of going around to every individual user of music and negotiating a payment on behalf of every individual songwriter? You might have 1 million members. Are you really going to sit down and go, all right, well, let's go through those 1 million songwriters one by one and negotiate a fee for the use of their music? Ridiculous. Would never, ever happen. So instead, they work under a system of collective licenses. They go to users of music, whether that's a massive national user of music like a radio station or a TV network, or a live venue or a gym or a restaurant or a funeral home or even Uber, and they will negotiate a fixed annual fee for the use of music in that business. And that allows that business to not just use one songwriter's music, but use all of the music. And if somebody wants to use a variety of music, not just one songwriter's music or one recording artist's recordings, but if they want to use music played on the radio, music streamed on Spotify in their business, this is the way to do it. You pay for all of the music in one annual fee. So all the money comes in. License fees payable from gyms and restaurants and bars and cafes and hairdressers and boutiques and all those other massive users of music. The money comes in. Once the money comes in, it goes into a central pool and then it goes out again. Now, if you want me to sit here and explain the algorithm of how it goes out again, I've got news for you. I haven't got a clue. Well, I do have a bit of a clue, but it's a complicated algorithm. Fortunately, performing rights organisations have things called computers, and they're kind of useful in trying to work out how this money is distributed across all the members. Now, if you go to a restaurant, or if ASCAP goes to a restaurant and says, hey, you have music playing in your restaurant, and the restaurant says, well, bad luck, we don't want to pay for it. You know, who's going to make us? The answer is, well, we can make you because we have the power of copyright behind us. If you do not agree to pay for the use of music, you are in breach of copyright. You're in breach of the copyright of probably 1 million different songwriters. Or in the case of a PRO representing sound recording owners, 1 million different sound recording owners. So you might think, oh yeah, as if they really sue anyone. They do. Those reluctant to pay music users have often found themselves on the end of copyright infringement lawsuits, and they're pretty big. And the reason why is because you're infringing the copyright of the entire member base of that organisation. And there's been, you know, lots of people who still philosophically think, nah, we shouldn't have to pay for music. In fact, we're promoting music by playing it in our bar or our restaurant or whatever. They've learnt the hard way, and a lot of organisations, a lot of businesses have been sued by performing rights organisations. And I'm sure for all of you who are hoping or already making part of your living from the use of your sound recordings and the use of your musical compositions, I'm sure you're in sympathy with the PROs taking that fairly strong action to ensure that you get what you're entitled to. Now, these organisations, because they represent sometimes 1 million songwriters, are a very loud voice. They're not just a passive organisation that goes around waving the copyright flag and saying, hey, why don't you give us some money for the use of songwriters or sound recording copyright owners' work. Because they have such a loud voice, because they represent so many people with a common interest, they actually become important lobbyists on behalf of their members. So you'll often find representatives of performing rights organisations speaking to congressmen and senators. You'll often find them running education programs, providing grants, having award nights, sponsoring different events that support the creation of music. It's a very important role that they play, and it's far more than simply a revenue collection and distribution role. They're actually a very loud voice on behalf of the members who are songwriters and copyright owners. Now, this all sounds great, but how do you, does this mean you have to become a member of a performing rights organisation in every country around the world? You know, if your music's getting played on radio and is finding an audience right around the world, does that mean you have to become a member of every performing rights organisation in every country? The answer is no. They work in a cooperative way. So if you are a songwriter in the US and you are a member of ASCAP or BMI, and your song is being communicated to the public in Australia, played on the radio in Australia or some other form of communication in Australia, your performing rights organisation speaks to the Australian performing rights organisation, and somebody sits at a computer, and all those flows of income from your work flow back and forth around all the performing rights organisations around the world. Now, again, don't ask me how they do it. It's really a complicated computer-based system, but money does literally flow around the world. I've seen, you know, statements for songwriters received from APRA in Australia, and it actually shows how much money has been derived from the US and how much from Norway and how much from from Brazil and all around the world. It does actually find its way through. So it's very important that you are a member of your national performing rights organisation, or in the US, one of the performing rights organisations that exist, and you will find that you actually receive performance income from all around the world through that system. Now, as I said, I don't know exactly how it works. I'm sure there are some, computer-based tech people at performing rights organisations that would take great delight in explaining how this all works and why it's accurate. But all I can tell you is that from experience, I know that the money does in fact flow. Now, if you want to see a list, there's a few different places on the internet you can see a list of all the performing rights organisations. Here's one, a website called Radio Sparks. It's not the only place you can find that list, but it was one that I quickly was able to identify, and it will list the names and the abbreviations of all the PROs nationally. As I said, though, you don't need to know them individually. You don't need to become a member of them individually. It is a complex but very effective network. All right. So if you're watching this class, if you're watching this lesson, if you're a member of Vampr and you are a working songwriter or recording artist, and you're not a member of a performing rights organisation, before you move on to Module 3, jump online and become a member of your local performing rights organisation. It's very, very valuable. It's effectively free money. It's money that you're entitled to, that you will get in smaller or larger amounts, depending on how widespread the use of your music is. But it is real money and you're entitled to it. So make sure you are a member. So just to wrap up this module and this final lesson, performing rights organisations are a huge and essential part of the generation and collection of income for songwriters and owners of sound recordings. They operate in most countries around the world. In fact, I'm pretty sure in just about every country. And you don't have to even pay to be a member. You are a member simply by joining up and registering your works with that performing rights organisation. Their work is based on copyright and the concept of assignment. You, as the songwriter or the sound recording owner, assign your rights, your performing rights, to that organisation, and that empowers them to go and collect money on your behalf and on behalf of all the other members. So if you're not a member of a performing rights organisation, you are leaving money on the table. Do not do that. Put it in your pocket where it can do some more good. All right, so that wraps up our module number 2, the legal basis of the music industry. 13 lessons, all important, and I hope that you got a lot of valuable knowledge out of this module. As I said to you right at the beginning of this course, knowledge is power, and I hope that all of you have a lot more power than you did 13 lessons ago. All right, look forward to seeing you in the next module, and thank you for working your way through Module 2. See you soon.